I'm not really very knowledgeable about the rock groups of the 70s and 80s. So I say to Debbie, I go, do you know who Dee Snider is? She goes, of course I know who Dee Snider is. Well, evidently the dude is the singer, the lead singer of Twisted Sister. And this fellow, Dee Snider, kind of a rock legend, although not to me, but nevertheless, he was supposed to perform at San Francisco's annual big pride event, gay pride event. And then he was canceled. And the reason he was canceled had to do with his position on the transgender issue. And Dee Snider has issued I gotta say, it's a pretty measured and eloquent statement, which I generally wouldn't expect from some guy who's the lead singer of Twisted Sister. But I think it's worth looking at what he has to say. He's speaking, he says, as an ally of the LGBTQ community. He says that they had asked him to perform his song, We're Not Gonna Take It, except they wanted him to modify the song, not we're not going to take it, but queer not going to take it. And he was totally game for this. And I think he seemed to be kind of excited about this clever verbal play on the song. But it wasn't apparently enough. And they decided he had somehow betrayed the cause and should be booted off. And so he begins his statement by going, so I hear I'm transphobic. Really? He goes on to quote San Francisco Chronicle's political reporter that Dee Snider is a longtime supporter of LGBTQ rights. He says he was honored to accept the gay pride invitation. And then he says, where's the transphobia? He goes, I was not aware that the transgender community expects fealty and total agreement with all their beliefs, and any variation or deviation is considered transphobic. He says, basically, my lifetime of supporting the transgender community, his right to identify as they want and honor whatever changes they make and how they present themselves to the world isn't enough. And he goes, why not? He says, and this is really coming to his apparent heresy. He goes, I've recently stated I do not believe young children are ready to decide their gender allocation. He says, I believe their choices should be supported and accepted by their parents, but I do not think kids have the mental capacity to make rational, logical decisions or things of a magnitude that will affect them for the rest of their lives. I do not believe they are mentally developed enough. And this for him is the sole issue. He's just saying, hey, listen, I'm not talking about adults who I'm presuming he supports, but I'm talking about young children who have not developed. So, and then he goes on to quote Dr. Jennifer Katzenstein, Director of Psychology, Neuropsychology and Social Work at Johns Hopkins, basically affirming what he just said. And then he goes, well said, it's just good parenting. Then he goes on to say, interestingly enough, and this is a broader statement of Dee Snider's political views, he goes, I'm a proud moderate. I drive a Tesla and a Hummer. I have too many guns, but strongly support intelligent gun control. I have 4 children, yet fight for a woman's right to choose. I'm a motorcycle riding environmentalist. I'm a heterosexual who proudly supports LGBTQIA+ rights. To me, and then he says, and I believe to many of you, none of these things are mutually exclusive. So I think what you have here is a guy who is certainly politically in the middle, has a mixed bag of opinions, is in general pro-gay, pro-LGBTQ, pro-transgender, and is merely saying, hey, listen, when it comes to the kids, we're talking about something a little bit different. And we have to allow them a chance to mature before they can make decisions that are not temporary, that are not actually easily reversible, and that have long-term impact. So this is this is common sense stated in a very diffident manner. And his point is, and yet you call me a heretic. And he seems a little hurt by it. But I think what he's putting his finger on is the fascism of the transgender left. the fascism of activists who will brook no disagreement and will cancel you, shut you down, boycott you, try to ruin you if you fall off, if you depart from their straight path, so to speak. I'm using the term, of course, ironically, in any way. And so when you've lost Dee Snider, it seems to me, you're losing the middle for sure. And now the only question is whether Americans like Dee Snider will have a little bit of backbone in order to say, all right, well, if you insist on taking that intolerant stance, then you are making of me not just someone who's not going to be an ally, but actually a political enemy.